Hello, it's Leanne Peters here. I'm from templeofbalance.com.au, Temple of Balance on Facebook and Temple of Balance on YouTube. And very excited to be here connecting with you for our e-course. It's the Psychic and Intuition Development e-course, and I'm doing this in 5 parts, as you know. So this is part 1. So part one rather is all about the mind. It's about meditation. I've called this segment Meditation and Mind Calming, and that you are in charge of your mind. So this may seem sort of left field from the psychic intuition development that we're getting into, and that will progress as we go further in this e-course. But I really feel and have noticed through my experience and through working with people over this last 15 years or so that getting in charge of our mind thoughts, working out what meditation is, how we can fit it into our life, what is it? These are really important foundations, because if our mind is full of negativity or full of clutter, full of useless, ridiculous thoughts, then we're not going to have much room within our headspace to connect with spirit, to connect with our spiritual guides and teachers, to accurately tune into our intuition and do readings for ourselves and readings for others. And, on that note too, readings and using our cards can help us so much in our life with our self-healing. So whether we want to read for others or not, it's really irrelevant, because, and it's sort of a personal thing too, because the help that we can gain and the insight that we can gain from working with cards is really quite incredible, and they can be a great tool to support us. So, that's where I see us sort of heading as we move towards getting through this e-course itself. So mind energy, our mental state, meditation is what it's all about for this sharing today. I've got a few notes and things here, but it's just very much intuitive. Everything I share is based on my experience, so it's not like I've just read a book and I'm just parroting that to you. This is practical stuff that I've figured out as I've been on my own self-healing journey for 20 years now and working with others for almost 15 to help them get in charge of their thoughts as well. So, navigating this journey called life is quite tricky, especially at times, but our mind can work with us, or it can be our biggest obstacle that we face on our life's path. So getting in charge of our thinking is really important. So during this segment, I want to cover meditation, how simple it can be. Sometimes we tend to overcomplicate it. So I want to look at meditation. We'll be looking at ways you can use meditation to work for you. I want to also talk quite a lot about our thoughts, our mind, getting back in charge of our thinking, tools to help clear our mind thoughts as well, and those negative thoughts that may be grinding at us or wearing us down. And I also want to finish up talking about the importance of grounding, balance, and connection. Or grounding, balancing, connecting, we could say. So we'll be finishing up with that. So that are kind of my guides. I've got a few things and key words that I want to talk about, but very much it's just intuitive. And you'll notice that, even though we're not getting to intuition yet in this e-course, you'll notice that I very much just trust my intuition, and it has become a way of life for me, and it's become something that I've deepened every day. The more I trust it, the more I can be intuitive, and then the more I trust again, the more intuitive I can be. So it becomes very much a way of life. So I don't want this to be rigid and, textbooky, but very much intuitive, because that's what this e-course is about. So you can think of this as a guide only. Everything I share in this segment and in further segments, just take on board what resonates and what feels right for you, and just let the rest go, because there might be some things that just clash with your own thoughts and your own values and your own beliefs, and this is okay. So just because I say it or share it or it works for me doesn't mean it's necessarily going to work for you. I find sharing based on my experience to be helpful, because I can then share what's worked for me, offering it to you, sharing with you how maybe it worked or the way I work it, so that you can work out or play with it and see if it will work for you. So this is very much information I'm giving you, and you can pick and choose what stands out, what resonates, what you want to try, what you want to attempt. You don't know something unless you give it a go. So what I like to think about is that if something's not working for me, then it may be worth looking at a different potential solution, maybe something I hadn't thought about before, because I know what's happening now is not working, so I need to find a different way. So if that's what you need to do, then you can trust that. So let's first of all start talking about meditation. Meditation, how simple is it? So we tend to think, and probably not quite so much now as what we may have thought, say, 8 or 10 years ago, when people did tend to think that to meditate you had to be in the lotus position, you had to chant for an hour, you had to do it at a certain time of the day, for a certain amount of time, you weren't allowed to move, there was all these rigid meditation was put into this quite rigid box. And, 8 or 10 years ago, a lot of us realized that it doesn't have to be that way, that meditation can be much simpler than following strict guidelines. So for me, when I meditate, it's usually very casual. I'll make sure that I'm comfortable, that my body's comfortable, that I have everything I need, that I'm not going to be disturbed, and that almost a must for me is having my journal nearby, because sometimes even in the middle of a meditation, I will get my journal out and write down things that I know that I need to remember, and I'm not sure if I will when I come out the other side of the meditation. So, you can stay in a partially meditated state and still make notes in your journal. So it's a lot more flexible than what some of us may have thought. So as far as body position, it doesn't matter. As long as your body's comfortable, as long as your limbs are uncrossed, unless you're sitting cross-legged. So you can sit in the lotus position. There's nothing saying you can't. If that's what you want to do. But you can also sit in other positions. You can sit on a chair, you can lay back on a lounge chair, you can lay back in bed and do a meditation before you're going to sleep. So your positioning is up to you. The time of the day that you meditate is up to you. So hopefully you will know, and if you're not, then I pose this sort of question to you: when is your most active time of the day? So if you could divide your wake hours into, say, 4 or 5 sections, what sort of energy levels do you tend to have, unless you've had something random happen? But in general, what is your most active time of the day? What is your most quiet or passive time of the day? I know for me, I tend to fall into a super relaxed zone. I'm in early afternoon, so that'll be my time usually when I take a break from work, because I usually am very active early in the morning, unless I haven't had a very good night's sleep, which is a one-off every now and then. But I might start work sometimes at 6 or 7 a.m. and work through right till 1 p.m, take an hour or 2 or 3 break, and then get back into it at 3 or 4 o'clock or after dinner and have another evening stint focusing on my work. But I'm lucky I work for myself. So if you're working a 9 to 5 sort of job, you'll sort of have to work your way around that. So what I'm saying is, when is the best time for you to find in your day and what your day is full of to make time for meditation? So if you don't have a lot of time to sit and rest until the weekend, then you might find your meditation might just be, say, on a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon when you're relaxing and preparing for your week ahead. You may find that through the week, if you're quite busy and you don't really have a lot of time to stop and specifically meditate, you might find it helpful to go on like a meditative walk, where you perhaps walk for whatever amount of time you can allow for 5 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you can do, and go on a bit more of a walking meditation, where you maybe have some relaxing music on in your headphones, or you're just listening to nature and you're just letting the rhythm of your walk just take you into that meditative space. So to meditate to me is just to simply get focused, to focus on something. Your meditation might be formal, sitting, going through a guided meditation. Yours may be walking, it may be creating, it may be just sitting and relaxing quietly. So how and what our meditation looks like is a very personal thing. Our environment is really important too when it comes to meditating. If there's tension in the home or tension in the space that we might be trying to meditate in, it can be very difficult to focus, because we'll be picking up on subtle energies, on the negativity, of the drama, of the hatred or whatever's going on, or the anger in the space. So clearing our environment with smudging, like a smudge stick or some incense, where you just go around all the corners with your smoke, your sage stick or incense, or just a feather or a crystal or your own hand or a leaf or something, and just go around all the walls, all the areas around the room that you're wanting to go in, and just imagine clearing all that old negative energy out, and out of that room, out of your home, out of that space, so that you can be in as clearer environment as possible in your outer sort of space that you're creating. If you're going into nature, if you're sitting at a beach or at a park, or out in the forest somewhere, you might not need to smudge. You might just want to make sure your space is clean and that it feels right, that you have what you need. And you don't really need much. You can have as much stuff as you want around you as you meditate, or you might just want to keep it simple and just have you. I tend to like to have my phone off. I don't want to be thinking about my phone or being pulled into that, so I'll usually turn that off unless I'm using it for music. I will pretty much always have my journal, unless it's a spontaneous meditation time, then I might not have that there. So my journal, if I'm planning it, I might take a crystal that I'm really connecting with at the time, and I'll usually take my healing energy cards and maybe pull one or two just to give me a focal point going into the meditation. So what tools you use in your meditation is personal, and what you feel drawn to at the time. So there are phases that we go through too. Like I know last year, about a year ago, Corey and I were camping a lot at a nearby place called Coles Bay, and there are these mountains there that I just really connect with, and their presence is really powerful. It's like our own little Uluru is what I feel there. But the rocks are made of this granite, and Corey and I found these little alcoves around them, because there's water, the oceans all around these mountains, and there's small fragments of rocks that have broken away, and almost so much that they've formed like a gravelly sand. So, you know, I found in the past, or, you know, a year ago, special rocks that just bring that space to me. So as I'm feeling my connection to the presence of these mountains, especially when I'm not there, when I'm back home, then I can grab that, just a plain granite piece of rock. It's no special crystal or anything. It's just a piece of rock that just feels right. And I can hold that on my body. I can keep that close. Or I really like holding it in my hand, so I like feeling the texture, the tactile nature of the rock, and use that to help support my meditation, especially if I'm exploring that specific thing. I've also lately had a bit of a craze about peacocks. So the peacock card in my Animal Kingdom Oracle cards, I've grabbed that out in meditation and relax with the peacock and think about, okay, how can I connect with this peacock? So with meditations, you can do, if we're looking at more of a traditional meditation, you can follow a guided meditation like the one that accompanies this video. You can follow the guided meditation, but you can also do your own meditation where you maybe establish somewhere solid in your mind that you visit. So there's a couple of places I have created over decades of meditation that I like to go to in my mind. One place that comes to mind is this nature setting. And for many, many decades, I've been imagining myself sitting on the side of a hill. And I know this is an actual location that I know, it's just across the bay here. And sitting on this hill, looking out on the bay and the water in front of me, sitting right beside this tree. And usually I'm sitting here drawing the view, because I did spend a lot of time a few decades ago actually going out into nature and drawing and sketching the view. And I loved it. So when I was struggling to go to sleep, back in my 20s, I would visualize myself in this setting, and I'd picture myself sitting on the ground, holding the paper and drawing the view there. I could feel the support of the tree beside me and the scope of the view out in front of me. And every time I went there, it was just a little bit different. It may have felt different. The colour, hue may have just been slightly different than before, or what I was drawing may have been different. So I've let that evolve, and sometimes I still take myself there when I need to, as I'm starting my meditation. So it's a good starting point. The other meditation visual I like to do when I'm going on my own meditation that's not guided is to take myself to my meditation room. So I always, when I'm starting meditation and I'm doing it on my own, I always focus on my breathing first, and I think about letting go of my worries, my stresses, the pressure that I'm under in my life, and think about, okay, preparing myself for meditation. So I spend as much time as I need breathing and focusing. And then in this second visual that I like to do, I imagine myself walking up a set of 10 steps. So I count my way up and I feel my body move like I'm stepping on one step, then the second, then the third, and almost at the top and up to 10. So when I get to the top step at 10, I expand my visualization or my imagination, and I imagine that there's a hallway right in front of me. And in this hallway are a bunch of rooms with doors closed. And as I walk along the second or the third door on the left, it has my name on it. So then I leave my stresses outside the door. I imagine a box there that I fill up with the stresses and worries and whatever is going on in my life. And I reach my hand into my pocket and I pull out a key and I open the door and I close it behind me. Now, over probably 2 decades of going to this space, I've created my meditation room very personally. So on the left-hand wall is a mural, a bit like in Xanadu. Do you remember Xanadu? And the mural on the wall, and then it comes to life. So this mural on my wall is my loved ones in spirit. They're my spiritual teachers. And the different beings, and also animal guides. I don't personally connect with angels, so there's no angels here, but there's animal guides, there's spiritual teachers and beings, and my loved ones in spirit, my really close loved ones in spirit, like my grandfather, muraled on this wall. I remember coming in over the years and just painting this mural. So it's like, a head-to-toe mural of my guides and my spiritual helpers. And it just started as 1 or 2 helpers, 1 or 2 loved ones there. And over the years, it's grown into this big mural. So as I step in, I always acknowledge them, and I let whichever one needs to come forward, it sort of comes alive out of the mural, steps forward, we embrace each other, and then I ask them the questions I want to know, or ask them to show me what I need to know. And then I have to trust that they will take me where I need to go, and I go on a journey. Sometimes we go into the mountains, we go flying like an eagle, or we sit outside by a fire and communicate and talk. Sometimes when I go into my meditation space, there's a healing bed. So if I'm feeling physically unwell, I will take myself to this healing bed, and my healing guides will step out of the mural and come and work around me using their healing tools. So this room has evolved over the years. I remember it started as just having a plant in the corner. A stereo, a TV was how I turned that on to just help awaken my intuition and my psychic skills. And then over the years, things have left, things have grown, things have changed, things have been added. So it's a great visual that has evolved. So what I'm saying, if you want to work with that, go for it. I find it wonderful. And I must say, actually, before I forget, that as I leave the place, it's like I turn the lights off. So I've turned them on as I went in, turn them off, thank my helpers, thank the space, close the door, put the key back in my pocket. And I go back out to the stairs and I count myself down now from steps 10 to 1. And as I'm getting down to 1, I'm becoming back more present in my body. So there are ways, there are focuses that you can use to go on your own meditation and put the guided meditations aside. You can also expand on the guided meditations that really resonate with you and speak to you, and you can use those or take them and make them your own. So get to a point in your meditation, especially if you're doing more traditional meditating where you're sitting and meditating. See if you can put your comfort zone, your comfort safety net of the guided meditation, see if you can just turn that off and go on your own meditation and really see the power of your own mind as it leads you and guides you. So there are no rules really with meditating. You can do it as often as you like, when you like, where you like. Just let it become a tool, because that's all it is. It's a tool to support your mental state and your spiritual connections. I also feel it helps support our self-healing. So if we've got questions, if we're not sure, if we're dealing with stuff, we can sift through things in meditation. If we have an animal that keeps visiting us, like recently I mentioned with the peacock, I did some research, I looked up the peacock. Yeah, some of the stuff was okay, but a lot of it just didn't resonate with me. So instead of just keep continuing to ask the question, why is peacock here? Why? I went into meditation and I asked. So in that meditation, I found out why peacock was personally showing up for me. And I saw a visual of it standing guard of a door. So I knew it was my protector, it was my guardian. So then I explore that further. So we can ask why animals, why numbers keep showing up, why things are happening in our life that we're just confused about. We can go into meditation and ask. And this is why it's great going into meditation and connecting with our guides or our spiritual teachers, because we can ask them to show us why we might be seeing that animal or why 1111 keeps showing up. So we can ask the questions in meditation. Now, as I'm preparing now to talk more about the mind. So it's really important now to mention, as we overlap between the meditation and our mental state. When we're in a heightened, active, negative, overreactive, stressful mindset or mind space, it's very difficult to meditate. So often I've seen people over the years say, if you're really stressed out, go and meditate. I've tried it. It's really difficult and something that just doesn't work for me. So if I'm in a very mental state, the last thing I am going to be able to do is relax enough to meditate properly. I'll probably find my mind just keeps jumping in with stupid scenarios and thoughts that have nothing to do with the meditation. So I found it more helpful in a heightened, active mental state to get active, physically active. So if I'm mentally just overthinking something and I just need to get away from this, I will go for a brisk walk, I will go for a jog, I will drive to nature or go for a drive itself and just sort of clear my head. I will fiddle around in the garden. I'll get my tools out or my gardening things out and garden or mow the lawns or do something that's physically active, exercise, put my favourite song on that's got a beat and dance and move. And basically what that physical activity is doing is it's helping those mind thoughts run their course and get out. So it might take a few days for those to calm down, but getting physically active can be really helpful in getting ourselves into a clearer, more focused mindset. So meditation, sure, if you're not in an overactive, heavy mental state. If you are, I would be just forgetting about meditation for a little bit and just get the mind under control. So when your mind's under control, you've got a better chance of meditating. So just so you know. Let's make sure I've covered everything I want to cover in this meditation section. So you can let meditation evolve with you and grow with you. So once you work out your favorite little bits about meditating, your favorite time of the day and your favorite mindset or visualization to take yourself on, you're going to create your own blueprint, if you like, of what meditation is and what it means to you. And it's going to change, it's going to evolve as you change and evolve too. So see how you go, let meditation work for you. Obviously, all of these eCourse segments are coming with meditations or guided focuses that support that particular message that the segment is about. I haven't actually recorded the meditation yet for this segment, so I'm doing that afterwards. But once I know what the information is and what stands out as prominent, then I can organise that guided meditation. So use those tools if you want to, but really let them evolve and see if you can let the crutch go of making, that you only listen to guided meditations, and see what you can do with your own mind and your own imagination. It's really exciting. Okay, so let's talk now about getting in charge of your thoughts. Your thoughts. The good old mind thoughts. So our mind can work very well with us and can support us, but it can also be one of our biggest obstacles. So right now, while you're connecting with this, have a think about, reflect on, contemplate what your state of mind is. Is your state of mind right now in this moment, not 5 minutes ago, not 5 hours ago, not probably what it will feel tomorrow, but in this very moment, how supportive is your mind? Is it supporting you? Or is it trying to sabotage you? Because it will, if we let it. So I feel our mind is a bit like a muscle, and we can become very lazy with our thinking and just let all sorts of ridiculous, useless, negative thoughts just really build up and rotate and play around in our mind, and it can become so filled. Now, I'm pointing to this area because I feel that our mind energy sits around our head in our aura. Now, if our mind energy is very active and negative and heavy, we're going to start feeling pressure around our head, maybe having a lot of headaches, or pressure across the eyes, around the temples, around the back of the head. We also get a lot of neck strain when there's a lot of pressure that we're experiencing mentally. Also, it's very draining on the body. So another sure sign that we're just way too mentally active is if we're feeling very exhausted, or exhausted easily, if our body is feeling drained, and we're finding it very difficult to stay focused on the present moment. These are all signs that we're perhaps a bit top heavy mentally. So our mind is a great tool. We can invent things, inspire and encourage ourselves to do things. We can reassure ourselves, motivate ourselves, think new thoughts, think new ideas. There's so much stuff that can really support us mentally. But if we're clogged up with negativity and mental heaviness, there's not going to be a lot of room for those ideas to spark in there. It's so heavy and full. So the key, I feel, or the first step in getting back in charge of our thoughts is being aware of our mental state. So as I mentioned before, you know, how much is your mind supporting you or not supporting you right now? You can check in with this and ask these sorts of questions to yourself several times a day to make sure your mental state is healthy. So awareness is key. If you're not aware that you're thinking ridiculous thoughts, you're not going to be able to do anything about them. So when you're aware, which we could also use some other words, when you're paying attention to what you're thinking, when you're listening to your thoughts, then this will help you really see what's going on mentally. This will help you really see that perhaps you've been overthinking things, perhaps you've got into a more negative, perhaps pessimistic mental state than you realized. Maybe you'd become obsessed with something or had been putting too much pressure on yourself and it's starting to weigh you down mentally. Well, you don't know these things unless you're aware of it. So listen, pay attention, be aware of what's going on in your mind. Because then when you are, you can do something about it. So there are various things you can do about what you notice. So if you notice that lately I've just been so pessimistic and negative and it's having an effect on me, a negative effect on me, then I need to do something about it. If you've noticed that you've been just spiraling out of control in negative thoughts and just thinking the worst about things, then your awareness shows you this so you can do something about it. So whatever is revealed through your awareness, through your listening, through paying attention to what you're thinking, then that's, whatever's revealed, now it's time to take action. So we've got being aware, listening, paying attention to our thoughts, noticing what's been revealed. Now, what's been revealed, we don't want to be investing in that too much. So what I mean by that is what we notice or what we observe, what we become aware of, we want to sort of stay neutral, like with a fly on the wall looking at it rather than, being the fly itself. So we want to make sure that, that we don't let what we realize pull us down further. We want to be aware of it, stay neutral, so we can practically do something about improving our mental state. So, what can we do about the mental state that we discover? There are a few things that I love to do that really work for me. The key to them, to any tool that you're going to use to get rid of that negativity and start getting back in charge of your mind, to get back into the driver's seat of your life and stop letting your mind control things, we need to really think about being persistent, staying dedicated, persistence, dedication, focus. It usually takes about 3 weeks to really change and reprogram our mental state. So if we're aware that we're just thinking way too much negativity or living in fear way too much for us, if that's what we determine, then we need to persist in breaking that habit, because if our mind is a muscle, it becomes lazy, it becomes negative habits that we get into with our mental state. So we need to reprogram our mind again, reprogram our mindset, and it can take a few weeks to do that. So being persistent and staying dedicated can really help. So there's a few ways that I can highly recommend trying in helping get those negative thoughts out now. So you've become aware of it, you've noticed what's not working for you mentally, and you're now ready to take action. So if you notice that a thought that you're thinking is not working for you, you want to be proactive in abolishing it, really. If you're aware of it but you're not taking any action, then it's just going to hang around, it's going to stay. So the action part is really important if you really want to get it back in charge of your thoughts and clear some of this space in here so you can have new ideas, so that you can connect with your spiritual teachers and loved ones in spirit, so you can tap into your intuition more clearly. So the best way I've found that works for me in clearing my mind, so once I'm aware of it, I notice that I'm thinking this negative thought, immediately, without thinking about it, immediately, that split second, I will go and show my negative thought the door. And what I mean by that is I spend a lot of time at home because I work from home and I'm at home most of the time. So I will march over with purpose, with determination, and I will open my front door and banish that thought out of my home, but really it's out of my space. So I send that thought out, and sometimes I tell it to go, get out of my head, and I shut the door behind it. Then almost instantly it pops back in, just to test me. Hey, I can keep going. I can do this 100 times if I have to. So I open the door there and then, and I kick that thought out again, and I shut the door, and I mean it. You know, I really mean it. You have to really mean it if you want to follow this exercise. Then I might be back on my way over to wherever I was working or whatever I was doing. On my way back over, that thought pops back in again. Of course it does. So I'm listening to it, I'm aware of it. So I march back over to the door again and open it and throw that negative thought out. It's just like I'm banishing some really naughty monster from my house and kicking it out, shutting the door behind it. Now, I will just continue to do that for as long as it takes. That first half hour is usually the hardest, where we have to be most persistent. But then we find that that negative thought actually starts staying out. And what we can do is replace it with a positive alternative. So that if that mind thought is telling you that you are not worthy of love, or you are not worthy of happiness or abundance, if that's what your negative voices say in your mind that you're kicking out, then as you kick it out, you can replace that negative thought with something positive, like, I am worthy of love, I am worthy of happiness, I am worthy of abundance, and it is all around me. And you can start replacing that negative thought you've just kicked out with a positive alternative. So you can do that too, to start reprogramming your mind. So you're getting the negative out and you're replacing it with a positive. And you're just continuing to do that as long as it takes to get back in charge of your mind. So it might take a few weeks to get fully back in charge, but you'll probably find that first day or so the hardest, and then it starts getting a bit easier. But stay on top of it, because your persistence in it is really essential. It's like disciplining a child. We have to be persistent. The moment we give up and say yes to something where we usually say no to, then we've got to start that reprogramming again while we're teaching and disciplining our children or ourselves. So let's stay disciplined, self-disciplined. So that's my favorite way of clearing negative thoughts. Another way that works for me is I also imagine that my negative thoughts are a ball, and I grab that ball with my hand and I throw it as far as I can. And sometimes I do that quite physically, and I will imagine grabbing that ball and I will throw it as far as I can. And I just keep doing that for as long as I need to, get all those negative balls out. As soon as they pop into my awareness, out. Another way that's worked for me too in the past is I imagine that those thoughts are tags coming off my head, like clothes tags that are scratchy and itchy and just filling up this space. And I imagine I've got a big pair of scissors and I cut that tag off. And then when that thought pops back in, I cut that tag off. So that's another way that I work on getting back in charge of my thoughts. I found that particular one really helpful when I feel a bit attached to social media or attached to my phone or something. I don't tend to do that now because I can just turn it off. But in the past when I have felt attached and like almost desperate or needy to, I imagine, cutting that tag off or cutting that cord so that I can stay focused in the now. Sometimes when I've been a bit stressed out or I've got a lot going on the work front and I'm about to take a break, and I'd only take a break if I really needed it. So if I'm about to take a 1 or 2 week break, that overlap, usually that last week of working, I'm trying to get things organized, ready to take a break. So it's always just like a really big full on time. Because if it wasn't, I wouldn't take a break anyway. So it's a full on time, and then I find I need a couple of days to really wind down because I'm used to checking social media. I'm used to doing videos on my phone. I'm used to things that have become a habit that I've then got to sort of break that habit. And it takes me a few days to do that. So cutting those tags, cutting those cords can also help release our addiction or attachment to things, even sugars, social media. I'm not a smoker. I've never tried coffee, so I don't know things like that, but I'm sure it could probably help in that area too. So our addictions, what we're attached to, what we're desperately connecting with that's outside of ourselves, can also be a great thing to, you know, snip those cords or remove that attachment. And that can only help make our space clearer. So there are a few tools that I can suggest that you use to help keep your negative thoughts at bay. So that initial awareness, what's been revealed, and then showing your thoughts the door, or whatever steps you need to take to get those thoughts out. That would be your first step, if you like, big step. So let's say you've already been doing that and you're progressing through your life and you're noticing what it's like to live a life that's not so mentally heavy and mentally weighed down. There's a few things you can do to help maintain that space, if you like, or nip any negativity in the bud before it sets in and becomes something a little bit more tricky or difficult to overcome. Not impossible, but just takes a little bit more effort. So meditation is certainly a great way to maintain a healthy, clear mindset. Also doing things you love, noticing what's going on in your life that's weighing you down or that's negative. You might need to amp up your protection shield if you're in negative situations in the workspace, in the home, and you can't make changes around that yet. Affirming and starting your day with imagining you're in a safe, protective bubble and no negativity can come in can be a great way to just keep your energy nice and high. Wearing a protective talisman. This is usually a pendant or a symbol or something that feels protective to us. So for me, I've got an Om symbol that I put on if I'm feeling like I'm under attack or there's negativity being thrown at me and I need to really amp up my protection shield. I'll put on my Om pendant for a day or two and I'll sleep in it, and I'll just know that that's helping reinforce my protective shield, if you like. Using positive affirmations is a really great way too to stay in that positive mindset. So really noticing what you're saying and what you're thinking, and make sure that those thoughts and those words aren't keeping you in a negative space, because our language can. When we catch ourselves, when we say things like I'm always struggling, or we hold ourselves in a sort of always state of negativity or lack. So if we can change that into something like that things are improving for me, as softening that sort of negative outlook, that can also help us maintain a more positive, open mind space. Also dedications. So I've been, for the last 50 days or so, I've been focusing on a daily dedication. And my daily dedication personally has been to follow the feeling of love. So every day I've been writing a motto or an affirmation that's got the word love in it that is important for me on that day. So for example, last night I didn't sleep very well. So my motto, my affirmation for today was that love supports my body, because I had a few things I wanted to do today and I wanted to feel supported in my body to get through the day. So there's various focuses on this dedication, and I'm naming it, I'm numbering each day too. So I'm up to day 52 today. And it feels good to get to 52 and to know that I've actually been doing this for 52 days. Is quite incredible. So I think this is the first time I've actually gone so far in a dedication, and I find it a great comfort and a great way to stay focused. So if you like the idea of following the feeling of love, you can replace that word love with joy or stability or abundance, strength. So you might find more connected with maybe even a word like balance. So following the feeling of balance. And how can you incorporate balance or joy or strength or healing or whatever word works for you into a daily affirmation or a daily kind of motto that you can focus on every day. It might just be for a couple of minutes, but it sort of gives a foundation, a sense of support going through our day, which I'm finding really comforting. So dedication can be great, stay aware, and also self-healing, continuing to look at our wounds and our issues, because our mind is going to show, our mind is going to be triggered by things that happen in our life that are based around our own wounds and our own issues. So when we talk in future segments about self-healing, we'll probably most likely talk more about that, but our self-healing dedication and really looking at our wounds, how we can improve ourselves, constantly letting go are all ways we can maintain a positive mindset. So avoiding distractions, although distractions can be good if we're in a very heavy mental state, sometimes distracting ourselves with exercise, a drive, doing something creative, some music. Sometimes we need distractions to take a break from overthinking, especially if we keep going into a story or something that's happened. I know for me, when my workshop burned down earlier this year, it was really difficult the first couple of weeks getting out of just the visual of it, the mental visual. So I had to distract myself. I had to step out. I had to go away from the space. I had to walk in nature a lot just to give myself a mental break from the story, from the situation that happened. And the more I did that, and as more time passed, it became easier for me just not to have that hovering around in my mind. So some things require distraction. Also, while I'm talking about our mental state, connected with journal writing, I find our journal great to express things and write things down, but it's not a great place to wallow and keep the old story going and going and going and going and going. So if we notice that we keep saying the same thing and we've got to call up someone and tell them what happened, or we've got to write down in our journal time and time again the same story over and over again, we're keeping it active in our mind. So sometimes there's a fine line between, what is the fine line between, using our journal to help us, but also keeping the drama going. And I guess it is really a drama. So if we're keeping drama going in our journal, if I notice I'm writing in my journal and it's just all drama, it's not me really honestly looking at my issues or taking responsibility for how I feel or what's going on for me. If it's just drama and I'm in that drama in my journal writing it, I will stop writing straight away, and I will actually avoid getting in time invested into this drama. I will avoid getting on the phone and calling my sister to keep the drama going. I will avoid being in a conversation when someone says, "Oh, what's been happening?" and then the drama comes up again. So if it's a drama that I'm over, I don't want to keep talking about it. So I'm not going to bring it up on social media. I'm not going to call up people and tell them all about it and then call another person and tell them. I don't want to keep this drama going. So keeping dramas going keeps us in a heavy, negative, limited mental state. So another thing perhaps just to keep in mind or be aware of is probably a better thing to say. Okay, and now I just want to finish up by talking about the importance of grounding, balancing and connecting. So grounding, balancing and connecting. really these are very similar things. So grounding to me is more physical, earthy, practical. Balance to me is stable, harmony. Connection to me is spiritual, but it can also be connections in our physical, and it's a united whole togetherness feeling. It's a bit like a tree, really, isn't it? Let's look at a tree. So if we have a trunk, and we have our roots going down, this can represent our grounding. This is if we were a tree. Let's imagine we're a tree, because I don't know if it's just me and trees, but I do feel we are a lot like trees, and our energy's a lot like trees. So we have these roots that stretch down into the ground, just like trees. So if this is our body, this is our body. And these are our roots that keep us grounded to the earth, grounded into our physical body, grounded into the moment, into our life, into our physicality. And then we have these branches, and these branches, this is growth, although there's growth here too. These branches, they just want to stretch up into the sky. They want to grow. These are our connections to spirit, if you like, our connections to the universe. This could also, we may see as our mind, our mental state, open, free, connected. So these are our roots and these are our connections. Branches that stretch up with growth. Maybe they have leaves on them. So the balance is our whole state. So if we're ungrounded, if our roots are kind of cut off here and we're ungrounded, we're not connecting with our physical life, we might be somewhere in our life that we're not happy, so we might be sort of cutting our roots off. If we aren't very strong, or we're not, healthy, I guess, too, in the root area with our grounding, we're not going to be balanced. We can't be balanced and be ungrounded at the same time. So the same up here with our connections, with our branches that connect above to the energy above. If we're disconnected, if we're cut off here at the branches, no matter, we might be investing a lot of time in our life, in our work, in our family, almost obsessed with those physical things, totally oblivious to spirit. It's going to be very difficult to stay balanced because we're stifling our growth up here. So we might be very active in, material things, money, workplace, and filling up our time with social events and things like this, very active in the physical sense, but neglecting our spirituality. So we're going to feel disconnected, and it's very difficult to maintain a balance when we're disconnected, no matter how strong our root system is. And just like before, if we're spending a lot of time focusing on our spirituality, meditating a lot, or investing a lot of time in spiritual things and neglecting our physicality, our physical life, our physical body, if we're doing a lot of, and I found that a little bit actually online, doing spiritual things online, that we need to very much be able to, or I've noticed for me, because I do it quite a lot, I practice a lot of spiritual things, helping people spiritually online, that I really have to balance my grounding and make sure I am walking my talk and living what I'm saying. I don't like the word preaching. So if we're so focused on building our connections and our branches up here and, seeking things, seeking answers, seeking inspiration, but we're neglecting our physicality, we're just going to topple over out of balance because our roots aren't keeping us nice and firmly in the ground. So an important these are all connected. These are important parts of not only our mental state and connecting in meditation, but as we move forward, connecting with our psychic and spiritual interests and gifts and developing those things. So making sure that we're balanced as a whole, just like this tree, connecting above, but also connecting in our life and connecting with our physical life, our physical body. If there's something about our body that's not working for us or that we're not happy with, if we can change it, I'm not saying go and get surgery, but I mean, if there's things about how active or inactive we are, what sort of food or things that we're consuming, if we feel heavy. I know sometimes if I've been eating a lot of sugar, I start feeling really heavy in my body, which feels really uncomfortable. So I want to make sure that this temple of mine, my body, is as healthy as possible. So I don't want to be fooling myself and convincing myself that something's okay when it isn't. I need to honor my temple, honor my physical body, which is honoring my roots, honoring this main source of grounding, because grounding really to me is about getting physical. So it's about our physicality, our physical body, where we are in our physical life. If something in our life isn't working, how long hasn't it been working for? And what can we do about improving it, or do we need to make changes? So in regards to our connections to spirit, how much are we practicing our spiritual interests? Are we honouring these spiritual things that we enjoy around us in our life? Do we have a little altar or a little space where we can have our few crystals or our special meaningful things that we connect with spiritually? Are we getting our cards out and finding that guidance that we're looking for? Are we connecting with our loved ones in spirit, our spiritual teachers? So this is also an important part of our balance, and what our spiritual interests are going to be different because it's a very personal thing. So if your spiritual interest is to go to church, then that's your way of connecting on that spiritual level. Or there might be other things that you like to do. Maybe your church, your spiritual temple is out in nature or creating or something. And then bringing those, the connection energy with the grounding energy, into balance as a whole system. And it becomes a way of life. Living a space of balance is a way of life. And we can't neglect our connections. We also can't neglect our groundedness, our physicality, because they go together. They need each other to be balanced. So working out what our balance is, how we can find it, what knocks us off balance. When I'm also questioning things like balance, for example, I'll also look at the opposite. So I'll also ask myself, what does it mean to be out of balance? Am I out of balance now? What tipped me out of balance? What triggered that? And what can I do to negate that perhaps next time if I'm faced with it? So really asking the questions and answering the questions honestly can help give us a lot of insight into what balance means for us, what being grounded means, what being connected means, and how we can associate that and relate that to our life. So perhaps some things to think about in regards to meditation, your mind thoughts, your state of groundedness, your state of connection, your state of balance. So thank you so much for connecting. I trust you've enjoyed this video, this connection, and that it becomes a helpful resource for you now and in the future. Next time we'll be talking about spiritual teachers. We're looking at them in relation to guidance, protection and connection. So it's going to be very much devoted to our spiritual teachers, our loved ones in spirit, how we can connect with them, where they reside. We'll explore all sorts of things. So I look forward to connecting with you then. In the meantime, think about how you can work with and implement the parts of this particular recording and sharing that have stood out for you. So think about the things that you've written down. Think about them. Do you want to give them a try? Are they helping you see something in a different way? See how you can now apply them to your life to help you get back in charge of your thoughts, and basically prepare yourself for the segments to come so that we can really connect deeply with our further connections. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. You can contact me through my website at templeofbalance.com.au. Thank you so much, and namaste. So namaste means that the divine, the creator in me, honors and acknowledges the divine, the creator in you, that we are equal, we are one. So thank you so much for being who you are, and I will chat with you again next time.